Hi everyone. So for those staying on, we are essentially track number 1, the AI and well-being track. So earlier you heard a bit of a teaser from my colleagues, Dr. Oliver, Theo, and so forth about the innovations that we're doing in this space. There is, I think, that the whole segment that you can see at the room or at the screen behind the room. But of course, we want to ground our discussion in not just the innovation part, but also around AI safety, efficacy, and of course, ultimately, outcomes for your employees. So this segment, we are waiting essentially for a setup, but we'll invite a panel to join us, hosted by our moderator and Deputy Product Marketing Lead, Hannah Loh. So joining her will be 2 esteemed panelists. First off, I'm glad to have Dr. Edwin Ho. He's the Vice President of Health and Wellbeing, Asia Pacific at BP. Joining him will be Debbie Ng, Senior Director, People and Culture from Singapore Pools. If I can have the panel up on stage, please. See you. Join your panel. Good to see you.
Thanks so much, Frank. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So as Frank introduced, I am Hannah, the Deputy Product Marketing Lead here. And so essentially what I get to do is to work alongside our product and tech teams to bring our products and solutions to market, as well as the client success teams, which I think many of you are working with to ensure that your organizations actually know about what we have and actually use it. So it's an honor to be alongside these esteemed panelists here today, which I will allow them to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Edwin.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here and be speaking on stage today with very esteemed panelists here. Background, I'm a medical doctor by profession, but I've moved from clinical side to what I call by corporate health. Been in corporate health for more than a decade, very much in the industry of the oil and gas energy. Love it. I spend a lot of my time identifying workplace hazards and risk. And what I do is to put in controls and to help people get better at work. So that's what I do in short. Thanks. Fun fact.
Yes, that's a fun fact, everyone.
I've held a heart in my hand before, real one, of a patient who's alive. We did some heart surgery. Yeah.
That is a very fun fact. Thank you.
Okay, that's quite awesome. Okay, thank you, Dr. Edwin and Hannah and Dr. Oliver. So I'm Debbie. I'm from Singapore Pools, and I lead the HR team at Singapore Pools. I don't think I need to share with you all what Singapore Pools is. I think I've done it enough in many conferences, so I'll just assume that all of you know. So I'll just jump straight to a fun fact. So I find it fun. So I do sort of my 3.5-hour yoga routine every morning, and that kind of connects me to, I feel it connects me to a much wider dimension. So that's quite fun for me.
Sorry, 3.5 hours.
3.5
What time
hours.
do you wake up?
Every morning.
Wow.
But you feel super good. Yeah, beats alcohol, beats drugs. I've never taken drugs.
Really?
But yes.
What time do you start?
What time do I start? So I work backwards. If I've got to do the school run, so the kids got to be out of the door by 7. So you work, okay, and I take 1 hour shower in the morning. So meaning 3.5 plus 4, 1 hour means 4.5, so 7. So you work backwards. So I need to wake up by 2:30.
Who's still asleep at that time? Because I'm definitely still asleep, or maybe just falling asleep. Thanks so much, Debbie. Dr. Oliver.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Oliver. I'm the VP Clinical at Intellect. So I have an academic and a clinical background. I'm actually a therapist by training. I'll speak more to that later. So I wear several hats, 2 main hats at Intellect. One is clinical quality, to make sure that the product and service you all purchase from us is best in class. And the other is innovation and research. So we have an active research lab, and I shared a bit about that earlier as well, and I'll speak to that as well in a second. Yeah. Fun fact, I'm not so sure. I've got 2 young girls, and I'll spend a lot of time with them. I'm teaching them chess because that's one of my sort of vices. I don't know whether that's fun. It's actually quite competitive, but yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Very nice, thank you. I'm learning new things about the three of you. Very shocked at the 2:30 a.m., but that's all right. We all sleep and wake up at different times. Okay, so we can see here that together our panel brings a very diverse perspective to the table. We have clinical guidance here, we have people and culture, and we have health as a whole. And today we'll be talking about a very exciting topic, which is AI and mental health. So we know here that AI is a huge buzz, but what does it really mean when we are applying it to something as delicate as mental health care, right? And so we're going to go beyond the friend or foe debate here today. Our goal here is to really explore how we can thoughtfully and ethically build mental health infrastructure and that is powered by AI, and what are the guardrails that we need to have in place when we're doing these things. All right, so I know we're all familiar with AI, but just to kick things off, I'd like to start off with a quick poll. If you all could please pull up your phones once more to scan the QR code on the screen here. All right, the question is, how actively do you use AI in your daily life or work? All right, and as everyone is answering this, maybe I'd just like to hear from the panelists as well. Let's just get personal here. I think we already did, but anyway, in regards to AI, what's one way AI has impacted your work or thinking recently? Maybe let's start with you, Dr. Edwin.
Sure. One of the most powerful things I found AI to do is to note take. In a lot of work that I do, meetings and conversations, I feel like AI has been a perfect companion in terms of taking notes. We don't have to get someone to do that. The AI transcribes and then it listens and then it summarizes. Even giving action points to do next, I thought that's brilliant. So that's one big one. The other area I feel AI is really good at is in validating some of my thought processes. So just checking in, this is what I think, this is what I feel. What's your thoughts on this? And I feel like it gives very good challenges sometimes back to me as in the way I think and the way I should be thinking as well. So if you notice, AI is very structured. The way it responds. I've learned a bit from there, but I also enjoy it because I'm pretty much structured myself. So that's a tidbit about me. Thanks. Maybe over to you, Debbie.
Okay, sorry, I just got distracted with Dr. Edwin's clothing. I didn't realize we are same color. Okay. We didn't coordinate, but
I wasn't awake by 2:30.
Okay, so of course, everybody, similar, I have a subscription for ChatGPT. Okay, so I kind of use it for lots of stuff, travel, itinerary, But maybe I'll just share two main examples that I recently, used it. One was actually when two of my team members got promoted in the team. One of them is actually here, Jin Ho. And they are kind of just touching 30, they're young, and then they kind of talk perhaps, a really cool lingo, right? And so I, wanted to write a congratulatory note, to the two of them, and And then I go, wow, so Gen X, So then I just shoved it into, ChatGPT, and it came out with, wow, say, all the amazing languages, right? And then I pushed it out, and then, they kind of, just my way of connecting, with my team, okay? So that's the first thing, one of the things I used it. Second one was actually, I was in an INSEAD course, and I joined their advanced management program. And so, OMG, right? They have so much pre-work. So you had to read books and books before you attend class. I'm like, okay, I don't have time for this. So what happened is you just tell ChatGPT to create a podcast, and then one boy, one girl will talk about the whole book in half an hour while I'm brushing my teeth and washing my face. And then after that half an hour, I go to class, I'm ready to roll, yes.
Actually, Debbie, I want to challenge you on that one because I figured a while ago that I have a bit of a long list of books I want to read and I never got to, over the years. And I thought on ChatGPT, right, I can just summarize those books. And I did that for the first 20, and then I said, help me to memorize and learn. I thought, what am I doing here, right? And so I went actually back to reading the books rather than getting to summarize. But I think the function is really, really fun as well. And it sounds freaky. It's so freaky now, right? What AI can do and how real it sounds. And, I think we're probably on the verge of, forming relationships with AI and not just getting addicted and over-relying on it. I think that's one risk. But for me as a therapist, I still have 1 or 2 clients a week I see in our clinic, and so I find it immensely useful, just like what we have from Dr. Edwin, to bounce my ideas and get insights and supervision as well, not to replace my supervision, but the thought process you can sharpen when it comes to clinical work is tremendous. And also, of course, the note-taking and summarizing or checking documents is like obviously super, super helpful. But I'd say you must still own your work. You can't over-rely on, like when I have colleagues, or I see that things are too ChatGPT, you have your break lines in there and everything is capitalized, and so that I think we tend to be a little bit lazy as well sometimes, so we still must make these our own documents and properly own them. So yeah, but lots of stuff, obviously lots of potential. We'll talk about the risks in a moment as well. Yeah.
Dr. Oliver, very interesting about the book part. I actually read book summaries, not with ChatGPT, but actually through apps. And I think that has changed my perspective of books, because I don't know how many of you have ever experienced trying to read a book from cover to cover and end up not finishing it. Don't put up your hands, we're not here to embarrass anyone. But I certainly will put up my hand, and I said, I can't do that. So what I do is I've downloaded this app, and 2 apps now that I use. And it's very interesting because it summarizes books, and I just listen to it, whether I'm on the plane, whether I'm on, en route to a place. And when I find something interesting in a book, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, this book is really good, then I'll get the hardcover and I'll start reading it. I'll try to read it. But at least my learning doesn't stop because I can't get to the end of the book. So I really enjoy book summaries.
Thank you all for sharing. And you can see here that there's different use cases of AI, right? There's a lot of note-taking, making things more efficient, and also, challenging thoughts, but also validating. I think that's a word that came up twice, right? But let's pivot a little bit into talking about mental health. AI in the use of mental health care. That's something that I didn't hear come up, but it is the topic that we're discussing today. So Debbie, I'm curious to hear from you, from your well-being and corporate perspective, what makes AI something worth exploring as a tool here for employee well-being?
I think we are open to all platforms. In a way, if we're inclusive as humans, we should be inclusive of platforms, right? Try everything. Okay, so I think it will be kind of like, it will pivot to people having open access. Means I can touch it anytime, anywhere, I can access it whenever I feel like it. So I think that's the positive part. And subsequently later we can talk about some of the things that we might need to be very conscious of. But I think it's good as a tool. It's there, it can help guide you through certain things. But exactly what Dr. Oliver said, you probably cannot be over-reliant on it, but we'll touch more about it later. Yeah.
All right, I do want to move to the next question, but before I do that, maybe we can pull up the next audience poll as well, just to hear from the crowd again. I'm curious to hear what are some maybe hesitations that all of you may have when it comes to AI in mental health. And while the crowd is responding, Dr. Edwin, could you maybe share what hesitations might come up when people say that, this mental health app or this mental health tool uses AI? Sorry, we can show the next slide. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, a bit distracted. So back to your question, what hesitation do I have when they say a specific tool uses AI? I think first of all, I would really try to understand what part of AI is in the tool, because AI is honestly broadly used everywhere. There's AI here, there's AI there, there's AI in the cars, in this and that. And I think it's just too broadly used today. And sometimes, just logics are also called AI today. If you go back to programming right from the start, if this happens, you do this. If it doesn't, you do that. It's logic, right? It's a sense of how programmers work. But people without programming knowledge call that AI. See, it knows. If I say this, it says that. If I say that, it says this. But that's just basic logic, and I wouldn't consider it AI. So I would say we've got to be really sharp at identifying, when somebody says this is AI-powered, which part is AI-powered? What is the AI in it? And when you say AI as well, is it an AI for within your platform, or is this going outside in the open? And that's my hesitation. Because whenever a system goes outside into the open, I'm not specifically mentioning any AI platforms, but if it goes out, then you've got very much less control over where your data flows and where your data sits. And of course, I think that's one of the questions that will come again. How safe is the data that comes? Because AI feeds on all the conversations that we have, and everything that we say and we feed it, it becomes smarter and smarter. It's becoming smarter every second today as well, because of what we feed it. But it really depends. So there are AI programs, and like for example in Microsoft, they said this is specifically within your enterprise. This is specifically within your corporation. It's not going to go out, and you can access information from outside the organization, but things that you say here will remain within your organization. So those kind of things are very reassuring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the audience can really resonate if you would like to take a look at the words that are coming up here, right? Privacy is a huge one, hallucination, accuracy, reliability. Maybe, Debbie, if you don't mind sharing a few of your thoughts as well on maybe some hesitations that may come up for you. Let's say when, I'm going to put us on the spot here, but when Intellect announced, oh, hey, here's Intellect Atlas, our new AI-powered suite. Were there any hesitations that may have come up initially?
I would say that, Hannah, can I talk a little bit about something controversial about the OpenAI case?
Definitely, we will also be exploring that. Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of know that OpenAI is being sued. The case came out about a couple of weeks ago, maybe more than a month ago in August. And Adam Rain, 16-year-old teenager in the US, committed suicide because, he was interacting with, and then it just validated how he just, took his life, right? So, so it's something that all of us do think of, and at the end of the day, it's meant to be, you hear this buzzword, right? AI and humans complementary. I think it's good. I genuinely think it will complement each other, but you just have to be so conscious that it is a tool. It is like I give you a hammer, and then you start hammering yourself. Are you going to sue the store that sold you that hammer, right? So I'm trying to say it's a tool, it's there for access, but you still need to have, you still need to come back to why did you have, here we're talking about mental health festival today, right? So you have, obviously you reached out. You wanted to solve something that you felt you couldn't solve yourself, right? You reached out. So you reached out to Atlas, okay? You reached out to a mental health app, and so, but then, is that going to be your only relationship? Is that going to be your only relationship? Is that going to help solve it? So I think while I can give you access, but you still need to come back and then think about how do I use what I have, the access, and then think about how can we go through this journey to get better. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, but at the same time, we can't really control what our employees do, right? So if you all are not familiar with the case that Debbie just mentioned here, as she said, the teenager, we are pushing. How many of you have seen, I'm using ChatGPT as my therapist. There's lots of social media posts out there, right? Are you all familiar with that? Right? And it's so normalized, right? People are saying like, oh my gosh, this is what ChatGPT said to me. Wow, I don't have to pay for therapy anymore, blah, blah, blah. And we're pushing this, right? And at the same time, yay, you are in a way getting some help. But when cases like this happen, how do we ensure that the people are actually following up with proper care? And so let's bring it to the workplace. If you were to introduce AI-powered tools to help your employees in mental health, what happens if an employee tells this chatbot that they're struggling, and that's all they do? They just talk to the chatbot. Who is ultimately responsible for that employee's care? Is it the HR? Is it the employee themselves? Is it the provider? I'm curious to hear maybe your thoughts first, Dr. Edwin.
So it got me thinking about a very important point before I jump into this space on who's responsible. I recently read about this book about how AI was created in the background, and then when organizations start creating the apps for AI, its sole intention and purpose is to give engagement to people and to feed information to users, right? And along the way, it learns and it grows and it gets better at that. In no way was any AI app created to diagnose or cure any medical condition. So let's be very, very clear about that. So if someone comes to an AI thinking that they can get diagnosis and cure, they're very misled. But the truth is, people do go out there looking for these sort of things, because how many people actually, there's so many reasons, it's multifactorial. Number one, stigma. You know, do you want to go out there and see someone and talk about this? Maybe not. If I do it behind the phone, nobody knows. So that's one. Number two, it may cost a bit as well. You know, going to a therapist, going for professional counselors, you know, seeing Dr. Oliver. Might not burn a hole in my pocket because he's my friend, so he might give me a free consult. But still, for some others, you know, it might be expensive. And then, you know, they've never experienced this sort of thing, so they might not even know how to get this access. So the first thing they do is go to their phone. But let's remember that AIs are not there to cure. They're not there to even diagnose. And the problem is a lot of people misunderstand that, and they keep using that for that. The AIs are there to engage, make it interesting when you talk. You know, when you talk about, where is the highest bridge that I can jump off? Oh, this bridge is really high, or that building is even higher, and they get indulged into that part of the conversation without realizing that. But if I turn myself to Dr. Oliver, he's not even going to talk about bridges with me. He's going to talk about, Edwin, what's wrong with you? Emotion, empathy, the human side of things that unfortunately I cannot bring at this point of time. And I'm just saying at this point of time because I don't know what the future holds. Now back to this story about responsibility. I think it's a very interesting analogy that Debbie used about the hammer. And let me, you know, expand on it a little bit. So a hammer can build such a great auditorium like the Star Vista that we're in today. And I happen to come here very often on Sundays as well. But the hammer can also be used to kill someone. So whose responsibility is it then, right? So I think it comes back to helping people understand what is the real use of a hammer. I often use the analogy of a knife because knife is easier to say, right? You can stab someone, but you could also cut the best dish. And in Japan, for example, you could cut the best sushis and all kinds of food you can prepare the best meals there. Again, who holds that knife? That's the important bit. And so it maybe comes down to the question of, if someone in the organization is only turning to a chatbot, is there something wrong behind that as well? Is that the only avenue where this person can go out to speak? And have we sold the right tool to the organization when it's only that they have? Because I'm talking about, what about people? What about line managers' role? What about colleagues? What about peer supports? What about mental first aid, which I heard just now? What about so many other avenues? HR as well, as a business partner. What about those?
Thanks for sharing. And yeah, I think what you mentioned, right, about information or education, it's not just, hey, here's a new AI chatbot, go and use it, but it's really the role of, it's a shared responsibility, right, of your partner, the vendor that you're working with. So, you know, in this case, when we're introducing something, let's say the Singapore Pools, it's on us to also let the employees know what exactly can use this for, put those in place, and also the HR teams or leaders in the workplace to also have that culture of, you know, making sure that AI is not the only thing that you turn to. You are aware of the other services that are offered and how and when to use AI, right? Debbie, is there anything else you may add on from an HR leader's perspective?
I would just add that basically when employees go there, you know, like exactly what Dr. Edwin said, maybe that's the first touch, you know, that they go in and they explore. And when it starts getting sensitive, again, you know, I mean, clinical psychologists, therapists, how you build that AI, right? It's almost as if to say, okay, suddenly get a bit gray, then you almost have to, those guardrails are really important. So I think subsequently, if we ever, you know, sort of use those services from an HR perspective, I would have quite a number of questions. And I would actually want to, like, you know, whether it's demo or it's looking at all your use cases, you know, like the common ones and the really extreme ones. Basically, I would have a whole long list to really understand myself. How does it work before I can sort of say, okay, come. And then plus, the comms around it is just so critical. So critical. Because it's to keep on reminding our employees to say it's not a be-all, end-all. I have to say this, it is not the solution. I know it sounds very, because people say, oh, you're rolling a product, it must be the solution. It is not the solution. I have to say that, yeah.
No, I completely agree. I want to quickly take our attention to one of the things you shared earlier on the word cloud. I saw that privacy was, I think, one of the biggest words out there. And I have to say, from my observation, I'm quite worried how little concern, I think, especially perhaps younger employees or younger people have. And I do think we should care about that. And I also want to flag out what Intellect is building. We have a lot of opt-in features, not opt-out. And we give a lot of options as well. You can request for your data to be deleted. We use a lot of encryption to build trust around the data privacy. But I wanted to one quick story share with you. I've just come back from San Francisco, the US, where we shared some of our research at a conference, and my SIM card, eSIM, I bought here in Singapore, didn't work. So I go to a telco shop, I spend $50 to get my SIM card just for a few days, right? And then this Gen Z young salesperson who was selling the SIM card, very friendly, so asked me what I was doing in San Francisco, and I shared a bit about mental health. And then she said, also, just to Hannah's point, oh yeah, you know, I speak to Nala all the time. I said, who's Nala? She said, oh, it's my, you know, the ChatGPT friend and therapist, and she talks to me in Bay accent as well. And then let me show you. So she takes her out and said, oh, I've just met this friendly customer from Singapore, and she showed me. But my takeaway here was there was very little concern around data. I actually asked her, I said, are you not concerned about your data being shared, very personal and all? Zero. And I do think that's, to Debbie's point, very important as well, that in your organizations, if you adopt a comprehensive mental health solutions that includes AI, you need to certainly do a lot of awareness building, both to address those employees who are particularly concerned. It seems to me from the workload that you have concerns around data privacy, and I think that's good. But equally, raise awareness that it's important to protect your data. So I think those two aspects are very, very critical. For any good AI solutions, make sure that you have good data privacy procedures in place. Because they're not given. If you just use ChatGPT, you can be rest assured that your data gets shared, and God knows, in a few years, when AI takes over the world, right? Hopefully, that'd be nice to us, right? Yeah. Back to you, Hannah. Yeah.
Right, thanks so much. Yes, and the fact is that all of those tools that you have been talking about, ChatGPT and the other tools that you've mentioned, all of those things are just not built for mental health care, right? So we cannot expect there to be the clinical governance or the ethics and the safety and privacy that you would expect a mental health AI tool to have, right? And so, Oliver, you kind of alluded to it about talking about what kind of privacy and data safety regulations we need to have. But beyond that, can you share a little bit more about what are the clinical guardrails in place that are absolutely must-haves or non-negotiables when we're building something like Intellect Atlas?
Okay, just a few points really. So the clinical guardrails we put in place at Intellect is, first of all, we co-develop with the product and tech team, so the clinical team, to make sure that the training data we use to build the features, the tools, is not biased and it's ethically sound. And we have multiple rounds of evaluations. We set the rubric where we define, for example, say, if your AI agent is meant to help employees with mental distress or subclinical anxiety, depression, then we train the agent on the respective therapeutic protocols. We use a lot of data, not just Western, there's another interesting angle as well. A lot of the data comes from the West, and they don't recognize then, as a consequence, that symptoms might be expressed differently in this part of the world. So I know especially older generations here in this part of the world, they might complain about physical symptoms when they actually have mental health problems. So the guardrails is twofold. When we build our tools, we make sure we use the right data to train, firstly. And then secondly, we make sure, to what I said earlier, there's a human in the loop. So, which is what I shared, what we built with NUS as well, is when a user refers to any risk, we have an in-house sort of risk system that immediately flags up to our 24/7 team that there's some risk identified to exactly prevent the tragedy Debbie just alluded to, so we can reach out. So we always want to make sure that employees are not just purely relying on the AI, but there's a clinical team in the background that ensures the safe usage of it. Yeah.
Thanks. Maybe you can walk us through a more tangible story. So what does that seamless or ideal partnership look like between the employee and how they're using it, the AI tool, and perhaps like HR? How does it all work together?
So it's an entry point, right? So if you're an employee, you come into our ecosystem, and so you can, of course, call our helpline, you can speak to our care navigators, you can download the app and start your journey. But if you don't know where to start, I think the AI is a very, very good starting point. So from an employee's, from a user perspective, you very simply, you log on to the platform, web or app, and it's quite intuitive, and then you start talking to the AI. You can say what you're looking for, or it would also ask you, it would guide you along. And if you say, I want to speak to someone, it makes it very seamless. It gives you an immediate button, connect me with a counselor, and it takes you out of the AI environment into connecting you with a real human being. If you say you're in distress or where's the next bridge, to come back to Edwin's point, then it would show you our helpline number, so you can call and speak to someone immediately, whether it's 2 a.m. in the morning or in the middle of the day. That's from the employee's perspective. So it's instantaneous care, but with the human guardrails. From an HR perspective, if you are using Intellect Vault, then you can use our AI tool to query the data. If you don't know where to start, you can say, what's my burnout risk in the company? Or you can slice and dice the data to identify pockets of risk. And then we support you with our consultancy as well, be it psychosocial risk management, or whether it's using mental health first aid to build up your mental health skills. So we work with you then to act on that data. So again, you're not left alone just with the data insights, but we partner with you to put real actionables in place. So again, it's not just the AI, it's the human element as well.
Thanks, Dr. Oliver. So it's really, you summarized it really well, but having that human in the loop always, right? And making sure that, firstly, we are building the safety guardrails in place, and making sure that there is always the reiteration or the improvement of the model. Maybe if you can talk a little bit on what kind of things should HR teams be thinking about then, if we're talking about training models, data privacy, like that, a lot of that came up, right? So as an HR leader, what kind of questions should we be asking, or should you be vetting for when you are working with a partner that introduces AI, especially in the context of mental well-being? Debbie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I touched a little bit on it earlier, but definitely the data privacy part, so it gets fed inside all the data, people are chatting. Is it boxed up? How boxed up it is?
Yeah, actually, very good point. Sorry,
Yeah.
Debbie. Very, very quick point to the data privacy part. We use zero. We encrypt zero encryption, and so we don't even see the chat. Like Intellect, we don't know. It's on the phone, and speak to our tech team. Anurag is here, our CTO, if you want to learn more about it. But essentially, we don't even have access to that data. So it's fully encrypted. However, the risk that gets picked up, that gets flagged to us. But that is only the snippet that the user had mentioned, I don't want to live, for example. That gets pulled out. But everything else is fully encrypted.
Yeah, that was my question. It's like, who gets access, then how does it get?
Only the user. It's between the user and the app.
Yeah, okay. So I would say a series of questions. One of those would be definitely the data privacy part. I would also want to know what gets fed into it, what kind of data, is it bias? I don't know, because the whole stream, right? Age, gender, ethnicity, the good, the bad, the ugly. Sometimes just feeding in the bad may not be, is skewed, right? Then you just feed the ugly, is also skewed. Maybe you also need to feed the good ones. Then it's kind of like, a balanced model, right? So I would basically ask all those to think about, basically, if any scenario can we think about, and I also would love to even see like how you've tested it, like what kind of questions have you asked, and then what did it come up with? And what are the extreme questions that you've asked, and what has it come up with? That would be something that I'd be really interested to see.
Yeah. Maybe I can, sorry.
I was going to say, Protik is in the back, and Anurag there. You ask him this in the break.
Yes, Shout out to our guys at the back there. But maybe if you can go back to your point about, sorry, this just flew out of my head. Let me circle back to that. Right, sorry, non-biased. Sorry about that. This is why sometimes I need ChatGPT in my meetings. But anyway, I promise it's all me, boss, if you're here. It's me. But anyway, Dr. Oliver, maybe you can just explain what do we really mean when we say about, like, making sure that there's no bias, and to Debbie's point also about the type of data we're feeding it and the cultural nuance. If you could just maybe share a little bit, and if you want to dive deeper, we can speak to Pratik and Anurag at the back.
I mean, I think you got me there, Hannah, because no bias, I don't know whether there's ever going to be no bias. We're trying to reduce bias because we know that a lot of the Western data it's biased in the sense that there's just naturally less data on how, say, Asians express mental distress, for example. Like I just said, if say an elderly Chinese man complains about tummy ache, that from my earlier therapeutic work in NUS, could mean that he or she has depression. So you want to make sure, if you type in "I've got tummy ache," for example, that the AI agent you're speaking with has some context and would follow up with the right questions, rather than saying, "Hey, I sent you to a GP to have your tummy checked." Maybe check, how you're feeling in general. Do you feel perhaps low? Is your mood lower than usual? Tell me more about that. So yeah, it's the bias is around symptom expression is one thing, I think, and then also by demographics. So younger people might talk differently, use different slang. So you want to make sure that whatever language is used in Singlish, you have in there as well, because that might be missed if you build that in the US.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's really about having a large enough data set and a diverse enough data set, which, Intellect has millions of users around the world with a very strong presence in APAC, which is exactly like what you mentioned, lacking in some of the other tools that are being built out there, because a lot of the data sets come from the Western audience. And what we have is a very strong user base here in the APAC region, right? And Dr. Edwin, is there anything else perhaps that you want to add about things that we should be thinking about critically when we are analyzing the use of AI in mental health?
Just on the point on privacy, AI learns from the things that you say and the stories that you tell. And interestingly as well, you would need to log in. So there is a way to trace it back somehow, some way, that this story came from individuals like myself or you or anyone else in this room. And I think if we get that right, then we're not too worried. It's really music to my ears, listening to Dr. Oliver sharing about how it's built in a way to maintain that sort of privacy. I think that's very, very different from ChatGPT, for example, or other systems that Gemini and the others at the outside world, like Meta AI and things like that, because that really has zero boundaries out there. It's a big world out there, dark and scary as well. But this one seems to be a very, very well defined with real good boundaries and guardrails as well. So I think if the data remains within the organization, that's a great start. It's not the end. But also then, how do we make it, how do we keep it within as well and from others? Because even within, it's also dangerous. A good example that I would share is Copilot in Microsoft, and some of you use that at your office. Copilot scans through your emails and attachments and files and things like that. Interestingly, at some point, there was someone that mentioned, and I think there were a few people in this Copilot chat group that says, if you want information about something, it could actually dig into somebody else's email box and get files and stuff. If it's on SharePoint, wherever it is in the organization, it takes out information. That is powerful, but that's also very, very scary. I know none of us use our work for personal things, hopefully. But imagine if you had personal information in there, bank account statements, a password vault, or things that you send, personal stuff to work email, for example. All that gets in there. And if we look at this AI and this mental health picture, which is very, very similar, we speak to AI. Not a lot of times we speak to AI when there's something wrong. We speak to AI for all different things as well, telling us about our lives, telling them about our lives and stories about those sort of things. How do they then define to say that, okay, this one has a lot more privacy, this one, no? I think that's also something to be concerned about. Like, where do we draw that line of this is medical confidential, okay, this one non-shared, this one shared. Yeah, I think those are the few things that came to my mind. I've not actually used an AI chatbot for mental health, so I wouldn't be able to comment too much more.
Thank you. Perhaps your first time can be in our booth at the back there. All right. And you may be wondering, why are we asking these questions when Intellect is building something with AI? Why am I putting us on the spot here and really diving into all of these things that may seem so sensitive to us, right? And even putting Dr. Oliver on the spot. Thank you for that. But the truth is that exactly what our theme says, right? Building what matters, and we need to be challenging ourselves to be thinking about it from all levels, right? The security that we have and the data privacy, the protection, all of that from the employee, all the way up to how that things get passed on to us, how we continue to train the models and make sure that whatever is being done here at Intellect and whatever care is being provided is actually safe, it's ethically, yes, it's ethics, ethically sound, and it's clinically guarded. So with that, maybe just one last poll for the audience. All right, in the next 2 years, how do you see your organization's use of AI in mental health evolving? And maybe one line from the panel here. Do you see AI as a friend, a foe, or something else entirely? Starting with you, Dr. Edwin.
Are we at the end?
We are.
Okay. Because I did want to share some other fun facts.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe take some time with a poll, okay, so that I could just share this very interesting discovery as well. 70, 50, and 30, just fun numbers. But a recent study in the US found, and it's very interesting that you were in the US, so this might relate with your story as well, that 70% of young people actually spend their time speaking to a confidante chatbot. 30% has spoken about something very serious about their life, mental health related. And more than 50% fully trust and believe whatever they say. These are staggering statistics, but I think these statistics are also an eye-opener as to how much AI will be there in the future. It's no more if AI will be there in the future. I think it's just when and how much and what kind of impact it will bring. And how do we set boundaries around this? I think where we are today, and I want to just comment on that very quickly, is my interactions with people in the IMH here in Singapore is that they've used AI very successfully in the time where a patient is not meeting a doctor. So for example, you go to a doctor, you get yourself diagnosed, and then you get yourself treated, but the doctor says, come back in 2 months' time. Obviously, they can't say come back every day because that's impossible. But in these 2 months, it's not a single journey. It's not a one line that says, oh, perfect days for 2 months. It's going to be ups and downs and ups and downs. And who knows if the downs are past that threshold where it's dangerous. And so the IMH has developed using AI that ability to track and follow people through this. And they're very, very cautious and careful as well about not diagnosing, about not treating, but merely in the follow-up. And I think that's very, very exciting. I think that space, I would say, green light, go ahead. It's great. There are 3 states in the US, and I believe this is very, very recent as well, that says no AI chatbot to diagnose, treat, and even follow up with mental health. They need to have clinical licensed physicians behind them if they ever want to use anything close by. But not every other state and not every other part of the world. So I think the danger lies there as well. As we spoke about earlier, that knife, it's how we use it that really matters. Friend, foe, I would say acquaintance. You can be friendly, you can be nice, but you just got to be a bit cautious. Thanks.
I would say it's both friend and foe. And coming back, firstly, AI cannot replace Dr. Oliver and Dr. Edwin, okay? So let's put it on record first.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but it's friend and foe, and I will use exactly what Dr. Edwin's story on knife. You can kill, but I'm sure Dr. Edwin has used the knife to save many lives in the story of his heart in his hand.
That's beautifully said. Yeah, I can relate to that. I think maybe it's too early to say. I mean, right now, here today, 2025, I'd say it's a colleague, it's a teammate. That's how I look at AI. And some of the exciting research we do, I briefly mentioned earlier with UPenn in the US, what we've planned is to think more of AI agents partnering with the therapist or the coach or the clinician. Because one of the key challenges we have when it comes to therapy or coaching is that it's great to have a good conversation, and then life is so busy. We have a great session on a Monday, and then we go back to work, we forget everything, come back 1 week, 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, and then start afresh. And so I think AI is going to be a wonderful companion to journey, if you opt in, if that's resonates with you, to support you in your mental health journey by reminding you of your homework, nudging you, dynamically adapting. If you're not doing your homework, then sort of maybe lowering the bar a bit or making it more challenging. I think that's one use case where I'm very, very excited about. I think it's not so much a question how AI is going to develop. I think it's going to be rapid, explosive. It's more how we choose to develop alongside it. And I think it's very important that we continue to put those guardrails in place, because think about it, we don't have to do this actually, right? And that's as a psychologist, is a bit of my worry as well, that a lot of tech companies, that not necessarily is there a clinical team that has a seat at the table, because as Dr. Edwin said earlier, it's about engagement. Profit is being made if you spend a lot of time on social media, but not necessarily whether there's good clinical guardrails in place. I think governance needs to also come from governments. We have the national AI strategy in Singapore, which is very good, which gives us a governance framework. But that's just for Singapore, right? So what's happening in China and other countries, I don't know. So my hope is that there is a concerted effort, and we just have to be very watchful, very mindful, and ensure that there's good policies in place. And then I think it's probably likely going to be more of a friend, perhaps, but remains to be seen. It really depends how mindful we use. Don't use ChatGPT as your therapist, I'd say. Come to Intellect, better. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much, everyone. And yes, so we've talked a lot about the dangers that we have seen and the really, really real stakes when we introduce AI in mental health care. But at the same time, also explore the opportunities that lie ahead of us, right? When it's done safely and with the right people informing how it's being built, the right clinical governance in place and the guardrails, and making sure that all of that is being built ethically, safely, and responsibly. And so to, I guess, summarize everything here, friend or foe, and good to see that some people are experimenting, actively incorporating, that's great. Let's say for now, it is a carefully managed teammate. I think that's what our VP Protik would always say as well, carefully managed teammate who really has the opportunity to take us to greater heights and help us to expand or scale the care that is sound, that is good, and do it safely, right? So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you very much to our panelists here as well. I hope you all had some good things to think about. So thank you.